It's now time to welcome, it is my pleasure to welcome our main speaker, Taryn from Santa Barbara.
This music's funny. Hi, I'm Taryn. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Scott, for just giving me such a warm welcome. It's really nice to be here tonight. Welcome to the newcomers and the chip. Congratulations to the chip takers and all the birthday people. Let's see. So I end at 8:30. How long do I talk for? 45. All right. I'm going to try to break it up into even chunks, but let's see how it goes. I grew up in a household where my parents partied a lot. They drank a lot, and they also did some white stuff and some green stuff. And, my dad was just like this life of the party kind of dude. He grew up as like a dairy farmer guy, and raced motocross and that whole thing, and he liked to party, and it was always just a lot of drinking, a lot of people coming over, and then as the night would progress, the fighting would start, and the banging would start, and the screaming would start, and I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and usually, it was as soon as dinner was done, we were kind of just put in our rooms to deal with ourselves, and the party commenced. So that was how I remember growing up, and there was a lot of drama. My dad is double-digit DUI guy, and it was in the years in the back in the day. It started in the early 80s, and they were just spaced out enough, and that he didn't do any significant time because of it. And it was just the cycle of him losing his job because he couldn't drive anymore, and just my parents were just super broke because all they did was party and lose their jobs because of DUIs and things like that. So I don't think that the household that I grew up with is the reason that I became an alcoholic. I really don't. I was dealt a hand of cards, and I chose to play it the way I chose to play it, and maybe I didn't have the most emotionally available, perfect parent model, but who of us, who does? But I decided to cope the way I decided to cope, and by the time I was 13, I was just, Eben, by the way, thank you for your share. I totally related, just pedal to the metal immediately. By 13, it was full on pot and acid, and it was crank before it was meth. It was the crank, and it was the coke, and it was just everything, and I liked it all, and I didn't discriminate. And of course, right off the bat, I was like, I will never drink. You guys are sloppy. You're gross. I just had my dad to look at, and I was just like, I won't be you. The voice that you make, and that's just not going to be me. And my first drink was a 40 of Old English in a graveyard with with a bunch of gangster guys, and it almost went really, really bad. And I drank way too much, too fast. Was flat on my back, and woke up with someone on top of me. And I wasn't assaulted, but that was how it went every single time. There was just no moderation at all. I just do not have a moderation gene, period. And so and I did it. I rolled like that for all of my teenage years. I don't know if I crossed the line into alcoholism, during that time. I think I was just doing it because I liked it and it was fun and I was pulling it off. And I felt more accepted among my peers, and I felt taller and prettier and smarter. And when I drank tequila, I knew Spanish, and it just all, there was no reason to stop. And I had zero consequences, I was able to pull it together briefly, in my late teens, early 20s, and just, pull back to more of a, party on the weekends, sometimes on the evenings kind of thing, and get a little job going. And I met a guy, when I was 19, and by the time I was 20, we were married, and had a little career going in the lending industry, and that was, early 2000s. We were doing mortgage loans. It was a very busy time. I was making good money, all of that. I didn't know that, like I said, we partied on the weekend. I'd play with some Vicodin here and there and smoke some weed here and there. But, I was going to work, and it was fine. But that marriage ended really abruptly in a way that, he was doing things that I didn't realize, and it was just a ton of betrayal at once. And, my world just kind of fell apart, and I had zero emotional tools. I had no tools to deal with that level of emotion at 21. All of my formative years, I was on acid and coke and crank and tequila and everything. So I just didn't have I could not deal with trauma, with any kind of heartbreak. There was no way I could deal with that. So I just went really dark. At 21, I just turned a corner, and I just started this, 6-year stint of 24/7 being as drunk and high as I could possibly be, 7 days a week, 365. There was no breaks, 0 breaks. And it went from one thing to the next substance-wise. And I went from one guy to the next, and then when I burned out his supply or his tolerance with me, it was the next guy, and, it went really bad. In there, I had, I told you I put together, I was in I was in the mortgage lending industry, and, when my using and drinking started to escalate after the marriage ended, I wasn't really able to show up for that very much. And, I walked out on an employer that really heavily relied on me because I was just arrogant and entitled and thought I needed more. And I thought I could come in late and take a 2-hour lunch and leave early, and you shouldn't say anything to me about that. And I was going to work high. I was getting, drinking in the bathroom and doing lines on my desk, in this office. And, one day I decided to just not come back because, again, I'm arrogant and entitled and whatever. I'm 21 or something. And so I started to work for a different, woman in the same industry, but her kind of shop was a little bit less of the up and up variety. And so I'm sure you're all familiar with the economic crash of 2008 and how it related to mortgage lending and things like that. So, we were doing shady loans. That's the thing. We were altering people's, credit and bank statements and income and, forging signatures and giving loans to people who just shouldn't be getting loans. And, I was the processor. I was doing the paperwork. I was doing the forgeries. I was doing all of that. And, she was collecting big bucks at that time. And, I was on a salary, and I didn't really understand what was happening. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I was working for a fraud lady doing a bunch of fraud, okay? And so are these for me? One is for me. I can have both. I'm just kidding. I know, that's what I'm saying. And, so at the same time, so I'm working for her, obviously my morals and standards are very low. And one day I come home, come back where she has us set up in this really nice condo. Our office is in this condo. We've got a pool. It's really nice. It's like a good life, And of course I'm ruining it. And I come back to the condo one day, and she has the police waiting for me. Because, and so they escorted me out, and, she was justified in that, but of course I was appalled. And so, I took that as sort of a God shot that I shouldn't be working and that I needed to retire early or something, and, so, right. So, I just kept doing my thing, and, she sued me. She sued me because I owed whatever she said I owed. And I really didn't owe it, and I had receipts and paperwork, and it was actually my job to keep organized records of things. And so I had my stuff and my records and things, and she's filed a small claim. And I remember, and this is just an example of the alcoholism, this is just textbook out of the big book, I showed up to the court date with all of my receipts and everything, and I got in the parking lot, and I just left because I wanted to get messed up. I got there, was like, I can't do this. I need to go drink. I need to get high. I can't. And that cost me $5,000. She got her judgment because I wasn't there to show that, no, I paid this stuff. And I paid that in sobriety. I paid it off in full because she had the judgment, and that's just what that was. And I was sued a second time while I was out there. And this is a funny story too, so I'm always going to share it. I had the boyfriend, and he fed me these white and red pills, and I don't know what they were, but I loved them, and I would drink with them, and they would keep me like just where I needed to be for like 8 hours in a row, and he would just like divvy them out to me. Well, when he ran out, I left him, and he, not that he was like an awesome person or anything, and he wasn't an awesome person, trust me, but, he just, and that's how I was, like, if you didn't have what I needed, that I didn't need you, and I didn't think I was a bad person, I just really didn't have a choice in what I did, because I was an alcoholic and an addict, and I needed what I needed, and that's just that. But anyway, he sued me for, again, things that I didn't owe. And I swear to God, I'm not like in denial about, I promise you. But this time, we got a call from some producers that were working for Judge Judy. And they said, if you would like, you can have your case on our show. And if he wins, we'll pay the award, and I'm like, so how did you find, like, why are you calling me? They're like, well, yeah, we go to courthouses, and if there's like domestic kind of cases like this, we're all over it. Like, that's where we get our juice. We actually scout that stuff. So, yep, I said, all right, what do we have to lose? It's a free trip to Hollywood, and they, and I grew up in like the central San Joaquin Valley, so like the Fresno area. So that was like a big trip for me, and they flew us down, and I brought my new boyfriend, of course. And, we stayed in this hotel, and I rediscovered, a new substance that night. And I stayed up all night on that, and, went into the next morning, the recording of the show, like completely out of my mind, And, and there's a recording of that somewhere out in the ether. I can't find it. If you find it, let me know. But she was actually nice to me. She told him he was being a baby. But anyway, he got some award, and then he went out to, when they interview afterwards, like when you walk out of the courtroom and they interview, and he just like totally put me on blast. And he's like, she's strung out on pills, and she's this, and she's that. Like, he like reamed me. And, whatever. So, but, I just went straight to like a bar right there and just got as drunk as I possibly could afterwards. And I was like, I can't believe that just happened, and I don't really remember anything else from that day. But, those are like the funny, crazy stories, but then it just got super sad, there was, about a year of that time where I was like in and out of the hospital every 6 weeks, just vomiting out of control. Like, something was going on with my organs because I just was ingesting so many different chemicals and substances and drinking, and it was, really bad, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And they're like, we could take out your gallbladder because we think that might be it. And of course, I wasn't telling them like what I was doing, and I was able to just like pull off the look. So maybe they weren't doing like a tox screen on me. I don't know, because they believed that I was just suffering, and this poor young girl, And I was like, yeah, pull out my gallbladder. Like, maybe it's that. And I just saw that as like a freebie, as like a free surgery. And so I went for it. I don't have a gallbladder now. So, But it started to get really dark, and I wasn't able to like pull off the look anymore. My combination of junk started to really, really wear on me. And like the people that I was hanging out with were taking me to darker and darker places, and it started to become like just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, running the street, just trying to find everything that I needed to feel the way that I needed to feel. And I was, get this thing, to sell this thing, to buy this thing, to trade this thing, get this thing from this people so I can do that. And oh shit, now all of my stolen music equipment in my car is, my speakers and stuff are gone because of the people that I hang out with. And just, I'm getting jumped by these girls, and then we get like held up at gunpoint. And then, it's just like dark, bad, one thing after another. My parents' house got raided by the task force, and I was hanging out with this parolee, and they were looking for him, but I had been arrested 3 times in a row, so like they were looking at me. And so in 2007, I started to get arrested a lot. I got arrested 3 times in a row, kept like messing up, and I got arrested on OR, and they really don't like that at all. So I stayed in jail for a long time. I did 111 days. I was facing a prison sentence of 4.5 years. And, up until that point, I had not once considered that I had a problem. Not one time did it come onto my radar for a second. It was all you, having a bad year. I got arrested because Leo's out there arguing with that dumb chick again, and he's being loud, and that's why the cops got called. It wasn't because all the dope in my purse. It's not why I went to jail. It was his fault. Like, that's just how my mind worked. And, and really deep down, there was just no way I was ever going to admit that I had a problem, because that would mean for 1 second I might have to consider stopping. And the only thing I thought about, the only thing that mattered to me was the drink, just being out of my mind. That's all that mattered, and I couldn't imagine anything different. But, one day I was being sentenced, and I was in shackles, my wrists and my ankles, and an orange jumpsuit. And the judge is just like, you're going to go to rehab. Don't mess this up. This is your only chance. And so that's how I got to Santa Barbara. I was sent up to, or I guess down, and I went to a 12-month women's residential program. And, at that time, my goal was to get the heat off of me. I did not have a desire to stop drinking. I didn't. And I know in the text it used to say, the only requirement is to have an honest desire to stop drinking. And that word, they somehow wiggled that word honest out of there. And that was smart. So, I had an honest desire to not go to prison, and I had an honest desire for people to get off my back, and at that point, I literally, I was divorced. I had filed bankruptcy. I had no car, no driver's license. I had, 3 misdemeanors and 2 felonies. I was completely in the red, and my parents were absolutely done. Done. And I was 26. I go into the treatment center, and, one of the requirements was you have to get a sponsor. And so that's what I did. And I met a woman who was amazing, and she was sweet, and she had the car that I just had repoed a few, the year earlier or whatever. And she had a cute, bag, and she had really nice jeans, and, and she was happy, and so those like, checked all my boxes. And, but after, at that point in my life, I had probably not slept for 2 years, and my diet was like Skittles and Monsters. And then, just doing the street life and the street thing, like my language was just, just lyrics from rap songs. Those were the words that I used. And I didn't understand the big book. We would read it, and I would pretend that I understood because I have an ego. And so I didn't want you to think that I didn't know what these words meant. But I read the book with her, and then she would give me an assignment, and she would tell me in simple terms what the assignment was, and I would just do the assignment. And, you know, for step one for me, she's really like, let's just look at what your life is like right now. Like, let's just maybe think that you can find some help here, you know. And we just kind of did like a little list of, you know, mapped out what my life looks like right now. And she's like, do you think there's room for improvement? I'm like, okay, I can see, okay. You know, and she's like, do you think there might be a relationship between your drinking and using and this stuff? Like, just maybe. And I was like, okay, you got me. All right. So, and, you know, she gave me an assignment for step 2. And then, you know, for step 3, she would just ask me to memorize a prayer, you know. And I didn't know what I was doing. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing that I didn't understand what I was doing, because then I would have overcomplicated it and not did it. You know, and so I just memorized the prayer and said it. And really, like, just the fact that I actually took the action was making a decision to turn my life over to the care of God. And, you know, we did an inventory, and I remember reading, she read with me in the book when we were reading, leading up to step 4, and it talked about you're making a foundation here, you know. Don't make your mortar without sand, you know, that whole deal. And by that time, you know, I had been in that recovery house for a little while, and I was starting to feel an affinity for the warmth and love, and growing a fear of the other life, you know. And so something was starting to shift in me. And so at that time, I read that because I was strategically going to leave some things off of my inventory. And something, you know, I just heard something that we read that I needed to be fully honest. So I put everything down on the inventory. And when I shared it with her, you know, I was convinced that when I told her this one thing, she was going to be like, I'm sorry, I have to call the police. I thought I was going to go to jail because to me this was like the worst thing, you know. And she like didn't bat an eye. And that was a very important spiritual experience for me, because that showed me that one thing I was absolutely convinced of was not true. And so that maybe my thinking was not correct. And I had a bunch of those little instances. You know, so we did the 5th step. We went through, and she showed me my character defects. And then again, you know, I just memorized the prayer, did the prayer. She taught me about contrary action, and maybe start acting like a lady, and maybe, you know, start doing these kind of things and these kind of things. And, you know, and part of my step 8 was, and this was really important for me, was a credit report. Part of the step 8, pulling a credit report. And, you know, making amends on the financial world as well as the people, because, you know, I know that having all that debt and having all that stuff really slows you down, you know. And so I made my amends. I made some amends. My amends continued for a long time into sobriety. And I got kicked out of that rehab because I broke the rules, but I didn't drink, and I went into a sober living. And right around that time, I was in 10, 11, and 12, and I'm so grateful that I chose to just latch onto my sponsor and take all the direction that she gave me and just live in 10, 11, and 12, because I was so terrified. I was so terrified of going back home because I didn't trust myself or the people I was around, you know, and just the lifestyle that I had there. And so I stayed in Santa Barbara, and I went into a sober living, and at that time there were phone books, and I just called every company out of a phone book that I had any experience that would relate to that, and I found myself a job right away, and started working, and, you know, within 6 months I was able to go out and get my own little place, and I went back to school, and or not back, I went to college, and, you know, got an education. I got a couple of degrees while, you know, and working full time and sponsoring women the whole time, and just doing everything that was suggested from the beginning. And that was always, you know, you go to meetings, you have at least 3 commitments, you work with women, and you stay in the steps. And I just did that while I pulled my whole life together, one day at a time, 1 year at a time, pulling my life together. I got off probation. I got all the legal stuff cleaned up. I got, everything cleaned up to the best it could possibly be. And I got all the financial stuff fixed. I got, for 2 years I was taking the bus to work, to school, to the gym. And finally I got like a car, DMV paid off, driver's license, car, all of that stuff. And yeah, I just stayed in the work, and hard stuff came up a lot in early sobriety. And I'm so grateful for those experiences because hard stuff would come up and I would go into fear paralysis, and I would go in my head and I would just leave my body. I would leave the planet trying to control an outcome. There was a few of those things, such as at year 2 in sobriety, that woman that I worked for, the fraud lady, she got indicted. So this was 2000, it was 2 years, 1 or 2 years sober, so 2009, 2010. She got indicted and the DA called down here wanting to talk to me. And at that time I didn't have a car and I was taking the bus to work. And they came and picked me up from my office and took me to an interrogation room at Santa Barbara County DA. And I was freaking out. And my sponsor, this whole time my sponsor's like, you've got to show up. You've got to say the truth. You've got to be willing to face jail. You have to. And I'm just describing that. I'm feeling that palpitation from that time in that room, and they brought in this many papers, at least. And they were just like, why is this way? Why is this way? Why is this way? And I'm like, I changed that document. I cut that out and put it there. I signed that. I notarized that. This was this. And they were just like, they didn't know what to do with that. They were like, okay, well, we'll be in touch, and they ended up, and at that point, and I wasn't the brains of that operation, clearly I wasn't, and to them, I was just a kid trying to get my crap back together, and they ended up giving me full immunity and making me a witness for the prosecution. And I had to do a grand jury deposition, but I didn't ever have to appear in trial. But that whole process, boy, I'm telling you. And and it came up over and over up until, so I'm 16 and a half years sober. It came up until probably 3 years ago, every couple years, because she kept delaying it, and the case just got drug out for years. I think they might have finally settled or something, but I never had to appear, but it always would come up. And that feeling of ugh. But anyways, experiences like that, where I leave my body because I'm so scared and I want to control what's going on, and then I learn that God's got it. And then I learned that God's got it. And so I don't spend that much time leaving my body anymore in fear, trying to control what's going to happen, because I've got way too much evidence just to waste my time worrying. It says in the book that, my job is to be useful to others, and am I useful to, my sponsees or my clients or my husband or my son if I'm, detached from my body trying to control an outcome that I have no control over. So what is it like for me now? So I've got a little career gig going, in the industry that I almost, went to prison forever for fraud. And that's just a God shot there, and I absolutely behave myself in the most, I hold myself in the highest standard, and I had morals wise, and I'm incredibly respected among my peers, and that's just a miracle. Like, that's Alcoholics Anonymous all the way, you know. I'm trusted, respected, and, you know, people come to me for advice and that shouldn't be, literally shouldn't be, you know. And last year we got married. You know, I met my husband in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had a baby 17 months ago, and we got married last summer, and that's amazing. And you know, we've got a little home in Santa Barbara that we love, and you know, we're just doing the parenting gig, you know, the monotonous but awesome, you know, just day in and day out, get up, get ready for work, play with the baby, go to work, play with the baby, you know, make dinner, play with the baby, you know, and go to your meeting, you know, talk to your sponsees, and then just lather, rinse, repeat, and like, that's our life, and it's amazing. You know, my dad, that I told you about when I opened, I lost him suddenly in 2022. It was September 29th, 2022. So it was 3 days after my sobriety birthday. I got a call. I was on a run by the beach in Santa Barbara, and I got a call at a weird time, and my heart sank. And my little sister found my dad face down in the garage in the morning, you know, and he was drunk. He was drunk that night, and he went out in the garage to have a cigarette and eat his carton of ice cream. That was his thing. He was 66, and something just happened. I think it was cardiac. I don't know. You know, he drank a lot. He liked his pills. He ate like crap, and he smoked a lot. But that was, you know, and we had just spent, you know, my 40th birthday together, and everyone was here, and it was so much fun, and that was just like, you know, the carpet yanked out from under me, you know, and that was like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was just like process grief. And I feel like, you know, finally I actually had some ability to process emotions in a healthy way. I just cried, you know, I would just wail, and, you know, it would stop, and then I would wail, and then, you know, I had to immediately take the reins. You know, my mom and my sisters, they just don't know how to handle things, so I had to like organize the funeral, and then there was property, so we had to do a probate, and we had to do all kinds of logistics with like a real estate sale and all of this stuff, and I have the excellent background to be able to support that, and that's what we did. And, you know, it was in that that terrible news that really, you know, shook me into how short life is, you know, and how, you know, what are we waiting for? So that was just sort of the decision maker for us to get pregnant. And like, we tried for 1 month, and it happened, and it was just like immediately. And so that was really, you know, it's interesting how, you know, blessings can come from really bad things, you know. And so what's going on for me, like right now, is I have a situation that came up with work, and so I told you, like, the way that I used to be, and then I've sort of rebuilt myself. Like, I'm a completely different person, rewired. Like, I could not have a conversation with the girl that came here because there'd be too much of a language barrier, period. I would not understand what she was saying. And so there was a misunderstanding with work, you know, involving clients. Like, it was a messy sale, not on our side, but on the other side. And there was just on the other side a really poor level of communication, which ended up with my clients kind of being, you know, not having what was expected when they took possession of the house. And, you know, I was doing my best to clean it up, and, you know, there was furniture that was supposed to stay, and it was like this fancy designer furniture, and so I was trying to get it back for them, and, you know, the consignment store's like, oh, okay, it was authorized for you to pick it up, So I went and picked it up. I got it back for the clients. Everything was good. 2 months later, I get a call, you picked up furniture you weren't supposed to pick up. And I'm like, pretty sure, told him what happened. And the owner of this store is, long story short, I'm the bad guy, okay? In their perspective, I'm the bad guy. And I did my best to sort of tell them what happened, but I'm the bad guy. And I'm not okay with that. I go back, I revert back. It's like, I'm not that woman anymore. I'm not that girl. Like, I acted in good faith the whole time. I would have never picked up furniture I wasn't supposed to pick up. But I can't, I'm not okay with that. And I learned in a meeting, and I love this because this really touches on humility. And it was shared previously, and I heard it in my women's meeting, my Saturday morning women's meeting, and then it was said again today. I have to be okay with being misunderstood. That's what humility is. Like, I gotta just let them think what they think, and that's okay. Like, even though I do my best, and I'm an upright individual, and I'm a strong member of the community, and I can look you in the eye and talk to you and be completely honest, and I have no secrets, or people are still not gonna like you sometimes. They're still gonna think you're the bad guy, and I have to just let that go. But that has been like, I keep telling my husband, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this is the craziest thing. And, and I'm so grateful today to say that I don't cause problems, really. I don't cause problems, really. I mean, sometimes my reaction to things is not how it should be, but I'm pretty much, I'm not the chaos that I used to be. Anyway, I know I'm a little ahead. I always tap out early. I run out of gas. But, I am so grateful to be here. After I had the baby, after we had the baby, I'll share this with you. I realized that after having a baby, I realized that I had no business sponsoring women and giving advice to women who had children. Because I did not realize how absolutely demanding and just your schedule just changes. And I remember having a sponsee that had a baby after I told her, with the guy that I told her that she really shouldn't be with, and she got married without telling me, and then, now they're, and I was like, you still need to go to meetings, and, I was like, I don't care, go to meetings, and it's just hard. It's just really hard. And, I went from 5 meetings a week down to 1 meeting a week, and now I'm back up to 3, but it's just, it's humbling. I shouldn't have been sponsoring her, or at least I should have given her to somebody for those questions. Anyway, I am so grateful to be in front of you guys. It feels so good to be able to share my story. I really need to be sharing those deep, dark, funny, crazy, ugly stories so I can remember who that person was, and really, because I was saved, it's my responsibility to share that message of hope, which is, I was absolutely, my world revolved around being as drunk and as high as possible with no exceptions, and I don't ever think about that anymore, and that's the message of hope. Thanks a lot.